Hello, my friends, and welcome to another episode. I'm so excited you are here. I want to talk to you today about something that I think is not noticed enough in the key to a lot of success, happiness, well being, resilience, and I think is needed more than ever. Luckily, it is being talked about more. I do see it more now in kind of the conversation on social media, and that's the need for community in all aspects of your life, but really to understand how important having a supportive community is to your mental well-being, your emotional well-being, and your actual success, your success in life. I think that the word gets thrown around a lot and we all know that we should have community, but I don't think we really understand how pivotal it is. And one of the things I've been really thinking a lot about in my own life, I've sort of been observing different things about my life and just noticing different things about what has helped me in different aspects, not just in work and kind of my career, but also in parenthood and family life and just the happiness I have. And the thing that I've been really coming to appreciate as I get older is the amount of community that I have built and that I have always had. So I didn't build it all, but I know coming from a Iranian background, from an Iranian culture, I grew up with a lot of community, like in a very tight-knit community. And I come from a culture that is community-based, like community first. And here's the thing. There is a lot of benefit to individualism. I think there's a lot of benefit, like everything is 50-50. And I think that I have benefited from being raised most of my life in America, where there is this rugged individualism. And I think there's a lot of beauty in that, in not having to be like the rest of the tribe and being able to find your own unique strengths and your own unique personality. And I think in a world where we are now connected to everybody and so many things, it's easier to find your own community that is not based on just the people around you, which is what historically humans have had to rely on community. And so I'm very grateful for being able to, think about what is best for me and to put up boundaries and to be able to protect myself and to have those options. I think there's a very important part to that. But I also have noticed, coming from a community-based culture, how much this individualism can cause burnout and can cause loneliness and can cause stress. And it's fascinating to me because I can see both sides of the cultures that I've grown up in, to see not just the benefits, but really the drawbacks. And one of the things I started noticing about my own story was how much support I had in times of need, and not just times of like maybe need that is noticeable, or I guess, like grief, you lose a loved one, obviously, like people in your community kind of rally, but even in small things, even in little things, like if you lose a job or, you're sick, I never really understood how important it was that if I was sick, somebody would bring me soup, like my mom or my mother-in-law or my cousins would call me like, well, let me just drop this off. And I know that a lot of people don't have that. I started noticing it really intensely when I had my first child, because I come from a culture where you are very supported by the women around you during birth. And, in Iran, back in the day, like women weren't supposed to get out of bed for the first 40 days after they gave birth, which actually is not physically good for you. You should be walking. But the point was that like you didn't think about doing dishes or making dinner that night, or taking care of the house when you just gave birth like a week ago, let alone like going back to work, which is absurd in this culture. But I started really noticing that and comparing myself to a lot of my counterparts, my American counterparts, who didn't have any help, who would come home from the hospital and it would just be them and their husband, and they would kind of figure it out on their own, or have to figure it out on their own, and maybe have to take care of a toddler. And maybe they had some people, like some friends, check in on them. but it wasn't the way that I saw kind of my Iranian friends or myself, where, my mother would come and stay with me for weeks, and my mother-in-law would constantly bring me food every day or night and take care of my son and take my son over there while when I had my daughter. And there was just this level of support that clearly was going to have a difference in the outcome of my, you know, pregnancy journey, in the newborn stage, in the outcome of my children's success, because I wasn't run ragged. And I did suffer from some postpartum blues, depression, whatever you want to call it. I don't know if it was to the level of other people's postpartum depression, but I did deal with a lot of that. And I now think about like how impossible it would have been had I not had support. Like, had I had to go through that and be the sole one person responsible for keeping my son alive, for keeping myself alive, for feeding everybody, for cleaning the house, it would have been more soul crushing than it already was. Like, it was already such a hard time. And I remember in that moment really thinking like, my God, how do people do it without community? How do people do it when there isn't someone there to help them? And again, there is the 50-50 to this. Like, I realize because of that, there's a lot of give, right? That's when I take. I also give. I also show up for my community. I also do a lot of things I don't technically want to do, or I would rather spend my weekend, with my friends or by myself. But it's like showing up for family when they need it, when someone else is sick, when somebody invites you, even if you don't want to go, because you want to make them feel good, because you want to deepen those bonds, because you want to have that relationship. And so I say this to say, like, when you start seeing a give and take, you realize how much it isn't just about like, oh, I need to take care of myself. It's how do we take care of the whole or the collective? And I've just been thinking about this topic a lot, in thinking about different like parts of my own journey. And I think about a lot of the success I've had with this business, with even when I was a lawyer. And I really sit back and, like, as I've been kind of analyzing it, really think about how important community was in any of those successes for me. Like, this myth of like doing it alone or pulling yourself up by your bootstraps is just that. It's a myth, and nobody is doing it alone. And the people that, it's not to say that you can't be successful if you don't have a community. It's just that it is so much harder. It is so much harder for you, right? And I know for me, when I wanted to be an entrepreneur, when I started my first company, the photo booth company, I didn't have a large entrepreneurship community. I didn't know a lot of people. I was sort of trying to do it on my own, and it showed. The end product showed, right? Because I didn't have people to bounce ideas off of. I didn't have people to lean on. And I started growing that community. I remember distinctly at that time, me and my husband talking a lot about how lonely we felt in this entrepreneurship kind of journey, because the same community that I had that was wonderful for helping me with my children, or helping me, socially, or helping me feel connected, could not be the same community that helped me build a business, because they didn't do that. They hadn't done that. They didn't have that skill set. They didn't understand. My mother and mother-in-law and cousins were great about understanding motherhood because they went through it. And so they knew exactly what I needed before I needed it. They gave me that education, right? Like, that wealth was passed down. Their education was passed down to me in order for me to figure out what is normal right now. Because as most mothers know, like, especially when you have your first kid, it is one of the most terrifying and kind of, rocking events. It completely throws you off your axis because everything changes. And so you need other people to kind of light the way and say, like, hey, this is normal. It's totally okay. You shouldn't be able to do this. There's nothing wrong with you for not doing that. It's okay that you feel this way. And having that was like the biggest security blanket that allowed me to process what I was going through and, get my feet on the ground and figure out what I was doing. And when I started doing entrepreneurship, I realized that I didn't have people that knew what they were doing. There was people that could support me, or the people that were thinking like, oh, it's so great that you're doing this. That's wonderful. Cheerleaders are great. But it was different than a community of people that are like, yeah, I get it. This is really hard. This does suck. This is what you should focus on. Don't focus on that. Don't worry about that right now. Do this, do that. And I see a marked difference between my success in this business versus the success I had in my first business, because in my first business, I tried to do it all on my own. And I did go to meetups and I did get involved in a little bit of like the tech scene, but I was so terrified to like invest. I was so terrified that I was going to make the wrong choice. I was sort of this 1 foot in, 1 foot out, that I didn't really embed myself in those communities. I was still kind of in this lost place of like, do I want to go back and get a job? Am I really going to do this? I didn't really want to spend money. I didn't really have a lot of money to spend. And so I ended up sort of trying to white knuckle it and push through and just figure it out. And there is a lot of information out there. And so you can sort of be lulled into thinking, well, I just need more information. I just need to read more books, or I need to take another course, or I need to whatever. And I know for me, when I started coaching or when I wanted to get certified, I distinctly remember the feeling of being in one of my first rooms with a community of other online business like coaches. And it simply felt like an exhale. Like, it's the best way to describe it. It felt as though a weight was lifted off of my chest. And I was like, oh, they get it. Because every conversation I had was like soul filling, because people would understand what I was going through, and people would be like, yeah, oh my God, me too. This is what I did. And they would give me answers, and they would point me in the right direction, and they would tell me what to do, and I didn't have to reinvent the wheel. And I felt seen, and I felt heard, and I felt like I wasn't crazy for wanting this, and I wasn't crazy for not knowing how to do this, and I shouldn't have been born knowing this, and there's nothing wrong with me, and all of this shame and this guilt and all this pressure that I had seemed like it was instantly lifted. And I remember being in that, it was a mastermind that I had joined, and the teaching and the business coach was fine, it was great, but it was being in that community that shifted so much for me in this business, that allowed me to feel like, oh, okay, they got me. Someone's there. If I try this, I can go back to them. I can, figure it out. And that was sort of when I went all in on communities. I started joining different groups. I started joining different masterminds. I joined free ones. I joined paid ones, because I was like, the more I surround myself with these people that get it, that can help me, that understand what I'm going through, that can just be a listening ear. They're not going to solve my problems. There was no magic bullet. They didn't like tell me what to do for my business. They didn't do it for me, right? It's not that it's going to replace everything, but it is a key part of it. And I don't think that we realize that enough. I think for so many of you, you have these dreams. You want to be the speaker or write the book or have the business or change your jobs or have a more fulfilling job or be more creative or whatnot. And I think you think, I just need to figure out this path. I just need to figure out what steps to take, as opposed to like, I need to put myself within this community of people that are doing this. I need to like be within a group that understands me, right? I need to be within this journey of becoming this person or doing this thing. It is very rare that I will do it by myself, and it's so much harder and not fun. It's so much more boring, right? It's so much more frustrating to not have people to lean on. And for you to be the same, right? For you to be the same in that community for people that come after you. And so I want you to really take this component or this aspect seriously in your life. I want you to ask yourself, like, where am I missing community? Where am I feeling lonely? I'm telling you this, I did feel this when I was starting my entrepreneurship journey. I kept thinking like, but where do I find these people? I felt very lonely because nobody in my life understood at the time what I wanted to do. And it was a really hard place to try to talk to people that wanted to be supportive, but they had their own fears. They were raised with their own programming. They, came from their own backgrounds. And so they would put those fears on me, or they would try to protect me. And all that would do would make me feel more lonely, because I was like, they don't get it. And I remember when I got in these rooms, that feeling of, oh, they get it. They get it. I don't have to describe it. I don't have to explain myself. They get it, is such a comforting feeling, right? It's such a like held feeling. And so I want you to understand this, not just because I'm telling you this, because science backs this up. Humans need co-regulation, right? It is a term from neuroscience that describes how the human nervous system syncs up in relationships, right? The studies have shown that being around people that are supportive, around calm, supportive people helps lower your cortisol levels, right? It helps increase oxytocin. This is why, like, even venting to a friend feels better than just spinning about something in your own mind. I know, like, society has tried to, like, label women as, like, gossips or as, like, being judgmental, but it is a part of human biology to want to talk about your problems. Even if the other person can't fix it, they're not your therapist, they don't need to be, but there's something that happens in that connection. It's not just emotional, it's biological, right? You're wired to feel safer and more resilient when you are surrounded by people that support you. I want you to imagine it like this, like it's as if you have a safety net. If you're going to walk a tightrope, do you feel more comforted if there's a safety net under you? Of course you do, right? That experience of walking that tightrope, like the pressure is lowered a little. It's like, yeah, obviously I don't want to fall and I still want to learn how to walk this, but I know that if I do, I'm not going to die. I know that if I do, there's somebody here to catch me. There's a safety net there. And so this isn't beyond just like, oh, it's fun to have a community. You are wired for it. We were never supposed to live in the types of societies that we live in. I know I say this like I'm a broken record at this point. I say it in like every episode. But the way that our society has created where we are, in these nuclear families, everybody lives, kind of alone with your immediate family. You don't live with extended family. We don't live in villages. We are expected to do everything, every kind of aspect of it alone. Everything is supposed to be like all of the domestic work, all of whatever you're now, actual work, all of it's supposed to be like you're supposed to handle that. And there's a reason we all feel so overwhelmed because it was never like that. Nobody ever raised children all by themselves. Nobody ever did all of the domestic work by themselves. It was a village. It was a tribe, right? And we've been taken out of that and we've been put in these systems. But I think more sinister than that is that we've been fed this lie that you should be able to do it on your own, that there's something wrong with you if you need help, that like, especially in America, we like have this like obsession with this idea of like, not just underdogs, but like, pulling yourself up by the bootstraps and, being the person that nobody believes in. And then you kind of push through and you show all of them. And it's like working with this chip on our shoulder of like, I have to prove that I can do this alone. But why would you ever want to? And you can't. I mean, like we all stand on the shoulders of the people that came before us, that created the possibilities, that allowed us to do what we are doing. Whether you're a woman that's allowed to work, it's because other people fought for that. It's because other people worked for that. It's always been community. And I think that when you recognize the importance of that component, that it is, I would say, as important as anything else, as important as the funding that you have, as important as the knowledge that you're going to learn, is being in these communities. Because it's going to speed up your learning. It's going to be like, instead of me ramming my head into a wall and trying something 40 times, somebody in this community is going to be like, hey, try this. And that one thing is going to speed up 2 years of learning, right? That might be the difference between me quitting because I'm so frustrated and me actually moving forward. Like that component of somebody being able to help me or to let me know that it's okay is what will make the difference. Isolation fuels that stress and burnout. Isolation fuels the shame of like, there is something like, it's almost this confirmation of like, look, there's some kind of flaw within me. I just can't get it done. I don't know what I'm doing. And it increases that stress level, right? It increases your cortisol. It leads to like cognitive decline. All of these things have been studied and tested. And so your burnout thrives in that isolation. One of the reasons that I very adamantly do group programs and I don't like doing one-on-one work, I think that there is a time and place for one-on-one coaching, and I understand the impact it can have. So I'm in no way saying that one-on-one coaching is bad. It isn't. I've had one-on-one coaches for myself. I do like it. But for me, from very early on, one of the things that I noticed was how much people found change when they were in a group coaching setting. even if they never got coached, even if they never raised their hand. Because one of the things I would notice is that, and this happened with me myself when I joined a membership, a coaching membership, and I never went to any calls. I just listened to the calls on their podcast replay, and I started allowing it to change the way that my brain works. I started understanding with every person that would raise their hand and ask for coaching, I saw my own problems in them. When they would ask for something, even if it wasn't the exact same situation, let's say they had an issue with their son, but it was a boundary issue that I had with someone else. Maybe I had it with my mother, or maybe I had it with, a coworker. And I could relate to that person. But what it did for me was I started realizing, I'm not alone. It's not just me. There's not something wrong with me because I can't say no to this person. Like, I was socialized this way, and this person is doing the exact same thing. And it was easier for me to see how that person was wrong. Like, it was easier for me to say, like, no, you're allowed to say no, or you're allowed to stand up for yourself, or whatever the case may be. But it was harder for me to see it for myself. And I started noticing this in my coaching programs. I started noticing for so many people that have so much shame around their own thoughts, right? They have so much like this unending pressure of like, there is something wrong with me. There's something deeply wrong with me. We all have this like insane belief that we're not good enough and that there's some inherent flaw within us as a person that we're broken and we need to change. And it's fascinating to watch people have that lift just by listening to other people, just by watching other people be coached. How easy it becomes for people to normalize their own thoughts and be like, oh, maybe there's nothing wrong with me. Maybe this is just a human thought. Maybe the human brain just does this. And I have the same thoughts as everybody else. And there's nothing wrong with that thought. And how do I want to deal with it? And I started watching so many people be changed simply because they saw how normal they were. They saw what a normal human experience it was. And so the value, the impact of group coaching in my mind is far more than just the tools that you get and the fact that it might be more affordable to be able to do it in group. It's being in that community. It's listening to other people that have the same problems. It's creating that connection of like, there is nothing wrong with me. I do not need to feel alone in this, right? I'm adamant about I know it's hard for some people to get coached in a group coaching setting because we're all nervous and we don't want to be judged and we don't want to come off a certain way. But this is a hill I will die on because I've seen it over and over again. And I've heard it from my clients talk about like how they thought they wouldn't like group coaching or like they wanted to coach on their own. But they realized like when they did coaching on their own that they were still just sitting with their own problems and they still had this idea of like, why can't I just get over it? What is wrong with me? But then when they got into group coaching programs, they started realizing, oh, there's nothing wrong with me. I'm just like everybody else. And there's something so comforting in that, in knowing that, right? In letting go of this ridiculous belief that there is something wrong with you. And so I say this because I think that it is really important for all of us, especially as we are moving through this world that can seem so much more chaotic, and there is so much noise and there's so much fear and there's so much negative emotion kind of pumped at us all the time through the news, that it is more important than ever to find a community that you feel safe in, that you feel seen in, that you feel connected to. And like I said, I did feel like I was lonely when I was starting my entrepreneurship journey. And I remember asking myself, like, what can I do to feel more connected? Where can I go? And I started going to meetup groups. You can do this even online. Like there's tons of, Reddit groups, like, subreddits and Facebook groups and online groups and different programs of like-minded people, of people that are struggling with whatever it is you're struggling with, or that have some kind of identity similar to you, or have some kind of viewpoint that is something you are going through. I cannot emphasize how important it is to get in those groups. There are free groups if you can't afford it. There are paid groups where, maybe the caliber of help or the caliber of commitment is going to be more because everybody there is sort of working on something similar. It is life-changing. I truly feel like in the last 10 years, that community aspect has probably been more integral to any success I've had than the actual information that I've learned here and there from different like books and programs. It's this simply learning from other people and co-regulating with other people and having my fears be validated by other people and being able to talk through things with other people. It is so important for your happiness, for you to actually enjoy this journey, for you to stick with it, for you to decide what you want. And so I cannot urge you enough to find communities. And it's okay if you don't have one right now. It's okay if it's going to take some time. And I will say this as a final note. You also have to be a community member. This is a big thing. You cannot just take. I think a lot of people want to go into a community not consciously thinking like I'm just going to take, but we're nervous and we're scared and we don't want to like put ourselves out there and we don't want to, be judged or whatnot. So we lurk. Like we're just a lurker there. We come in and we don't do anything. We don't say anything. We don't ask for anything. We don't ask for help. You're going to get what you put in. And I think that one of the biggest things that I think a lot of times on social media right now, you hear a lot of talk about community, of like how much we need community, but I don't think a lot of people understand what it means to be a community member. I don't think a lot of people understand like what it means to like have to do the thing that you don't want to do, have to do the thing that is scary, have to do the thing that requires bravery, have to do the thing that sucks or is going to take time away from you. Like that, it is a slow build of relationships. I say this when as a follow-up to saying like I felt very lonely for a long time. And then it got to the point where like we were thinking, me and my husband were talking about this like 2 years ago. It's like now, I don't know if it's possible to have too much community. I'm like, we are inundated because we are in a bunch of different groups. We're in in-person groups in our city. We are in online groups. We've created kind of small friendships that have lasted in kind of the entrepreneurial space that we meet up with. And so now it's like an abundance of community, which is a good problem to have. But I say that to say like it didn't happen overnight, but it can happen because we were like both very strategically investing in like what are the communities we want to build? What are the communities we want to keep adding to? And so if you're going to go into these spaces, you have to like, yes, it's going to feel scary. And this is where you get to be brave. This is where you get to learn that courage. And you get to put yourself out there and you get to ask for the things you need and you get to help other people. And you get to like understand that like your input also matters. And that in order to have a community, it's not like only the smartest people get to talk or only the people that have the most experience. It's a matter of like different perspectives and people coming from different walks of life and people being able to add what it is that they get to add. And so we need you in that community, like actually being active, being a participant in order for it to run. Otherwise, it's going to collapse. Community is not just like a take type of thing. And so I want you to like, one actionable item is like, I want you to ask yourself, like, where are you feeling the most alone? Where are you feeling as though you are lacking community? Is it in your personal life? Is it in your professional life? Is it in the dreams and your creativity that you want to go after? Is it in fun, right? Where is it where you're like, I would really like to connect more with humans? And then what's one thing you could do today? What is one thing you could look up? Is there something in your city that you could look up? Is it something online? Like, can you just join a Facebook group? Maybe you could join a Facebook group of that kind of community in your city, right? Like I'm in a Facebook group that's like moms for my city, right? Or I'm in a Facebook group for Persian moms in my city. It's like, there's so many different communities. There's so many different identities that you kind of identify with. You could join an entrepreneurship group. You get my point. Just find something. Don't let this just be like another lesson that you're like, yeah, I do need more community. Like use it as the impetus to start something, to start that connection, because it will not only change your success rate, it will change the process and the journey. Like you shouldn't have to do this alone. It's very hard. Life is very hard, and it's so much harder to try to do it alone. And so there's nothing wrong with you when you feel sort of, I think for a lot of us that are going through a lot of depression, anxiety, sadness, grief, it's because like, again, we weren't meant to live like this. So you have to change that. You have to figure out how can I get those communities and how can I make sure that I have that support around me? What is one thing I can do? How can I start building that? And if you want that support with respect to your career and kind of the day-to-day life that you live and managing your mind, and you know that there's a difference, you don't want to do this kind of self-help stuff alone. You want to like have a group of people that are normalizing their beliefs and changing their thoughts and wanting to go after something bigger and not wanting to live on this kind of hamster wheel, I want you to join me in the Quitter Club. That's the membership that I have. That is where you will find the most supportive people who are showing you how to be human, who are showing you that you don't have to be perfect and you can show up as yourself and you can have whatever problems you're having, and it will help you feel so seen and it will help you feel so normal because you will see what other people struggle with. Even if you don't show up and ask your own questions in the beginning and you just listen to the coaching calls on a podcast, I promise you it'll help you start rewiring your brain because you'll start seeing how normal all of this stuff is. So if you want help with that, I would love to have you in the Quitter Club. You can go to lessonsfromaquitter.com/Quitter Club and sign up there on the wait list for when doors open. Otherwise, find a community that fits for you and get in there. It is the difference between enjoying the journey and hating the whole way there until you get to some quote unquote success that likely won't be as exciting as you think it will. All right, my friends, I hope this was helpful. I will see you next week for another episode.